Hi, and welcome to the lesson Comparing Methods, Customers. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how it's not all about the product, and I know that may be a shock. First, let's start with an overview. When we think about traditional projects, remember, we're talking about large projects. These are government projects, relocation projects, and normally they involve a lot of participants. The number of stakeholders are going to be over 250. And the way that you're going to interact with them is through large facilitated meetings, or sometimes with representatives who represent special interest groups. In these cases, you're usually using a firm fixed price contract or custom pricing with a quote. For agile projects, we're talking about more medium size. And again, these are product development or IT. Sometimes it might be changes in operations or consulting. In these cases, we're usually working with up to 250 stakeholders, or what we call Dunbar's number. This is the number at which we can manage social connections before we have to start using other elements of scale. In addition to that, the customer is part of the team, and it could be small teams up to many small teams. And we're usually using a time and materials contract or some kind of purchase model. With Lean, they're smaller projects that are oftentimes being worked in terms of sales, customer reps, etc. Team size is usually only up to about 10 or so at most who are working on a problem. And it's normally done through a ticketing system with a cost plus model or a subscription model. So we're going to go through each one of these in detail. Traditional customer management, again, it's a large project, and we're normally working with up to 250 participants or stakeholders. So think about this in terms of kind of a large facilitated meeting. It might be like a town hall meeting, and you're talking about something like a fighter jet. And a person calls out in the cloud, "Why is it so loud?" And the answer is, well, it's a fighter jet, so they're loud. That's why we're having to build them around here. These kinds of issues happen all the time. And in order to change the work on a project, you need to get all the stakeholders around the table. Again, we come back to our change control boards. The way in which we manage the costs or produce quotes for the execution of this work is through estimates. And those estimates come through as quotes or a firm fixed price contract. So if you understand that this is the means in which we're managing the customer, traditional project management, you can understand why it's so linear. When it comes to agile customer management, again, we're working on medium-sized products that are oftentimes like IT or like we've talked about in other parts of the course, rockets. In this case, we have groups that aren't quite as big as traditional, but we can still end up working in a big room. Here we have an example of a group which is doing what we call a big room planning meeting, where you may have 100, 150 people working together on a single agile project. And of course, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. The reality is, though, is that every team works on their own piece of work. And by working together in small teams with the customer on the team, there's always a sense of what work is getting done and why. There isn't a need for a lot of back and forth because everyone is a part of the decisions as they are made. The way in which we understand whether or not the product is successful and the way in which we contract is either through a paid model or through time and materials. This allows us to understand a break-even point and when we're going to get our return on investment. Then with Lean customer management, it gets a little bit tighter. We're talking about small projects that oftentimes involve either one-to-one or at max 10 people in a team. So typically when we're interacting with the customer, we're getting a call and we're trying to answer that call as best we can. When we think about the team size, we're oftentimes working with a group of experts, normally led by some senior expert at most. Oftentimes it may just be simply call support. And in terms of the way that we get paid for our work, we have subscription levels. These subscription levels may allow for faster responses, concierge support, or it may determine how many types of requests we're allowed to handle in a given month. In this means we're able to manage the customer and limit the amount of times that a customer taps into a Lean group, which can sometimes be an issue. So hopefully now that you understand a little bit more about the customer characteristics, you're beginning to understand why each method is designed the way it's designed. With traditional, we have to have these large facilitated meetings, so decisions have to be made deliberately, one step at a time, because there isn't a lot of opportunity to go back and forth. With Agile, we have smaller but still good-sized teams. However, many customers are on the team, and each team itself can make its own decisions. Because of this, we're able to move much more quickly and we're able to be iterative. But we also have a different way of being paid, time and materials or based on the purchase of a product. And then finally with Lean, we have smaller teams with experts that are responding to requests, and it's normally based on some subscription service. Hopefully this has been useful for you and you're understanding the differences now about when Agile applies best in your workplace. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.